Ole Miss dropped a cryptic tweet about a quarterback, and we put on our national treasure hats to puzzle solve accordingly.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast, hosted by me, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we dive into a cryptic tweet from Alex Brown that has everyone channeling their international treasure. It has sparked some fascinating speculation about who Ole Miss might be chasing in recruiting and what that could mean for A.J. Maddox, who could emerge as the QB2 in this situation in 2025. We're also joined by John Nabors of Locked On Razorbacks for a special Know Your Enemy basketball edition, breaking down Ole Miss's upcoming trip to Fayetteville to face the Hogs and discussing the impact of the transfer portal as well. Locked On Ole Miss is free and available and on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making us the first listen every day, and a special shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. For a second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for even more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. Don't miss it. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So yesterday, Alex Brown, who is a staffer inside the building at Ole Miss, put out kind of a cryptic tweet. Here's what it looked like. It says, trust your eyes, with the eyes being the emoji. A dart thrower incoming. I'm sure there's a little bit of wordplay there. A weird hashtag and then a hottie toddy hashtag. So this got everybody thinking about what was going on, because a dart thrower, everybody is interesting about the quarterback position at Ole Miss this season, and trust your eyes and all of that. So it got me thinking, and I started national treasuring, trying to break down this tweet to find out who he was talking about. And I think I have the answer. Whenever you see the hashtag JFND tag on there with the color orange, I put that into the Google machines and it came up with Rockwall High School in Texas. So that makes me wonder, who is from Rockwall High School in Texas? Well, the first thing that I thought of was Braden Locke, who was transferring from the Wisconsin Badgers, but about 9 days ago, he signed with the Arizona Wildcats. So it probably was not Braden Locke. So that got me to think a little bit of a deeper dive. And it turns out his little brother is a quarterback for Rockwall High School in Texas. He's a 3-star quarterback. He tore his ACL, I believe, in high school as well. He was committed to Wisconsin, but after Wisconsin let go of Phil Longo, he decommitted. And he has been uncommitted for 2 or 3 weeks since then. This would make a ton of sense for Ole Miss to have him in and what's going to happen. Now, if he were to re-sign again, he would probably have to wait until the late signing period to do it. So it's a February signature. But I do believe that the tweet that Alex Brown put out was about Landon Locke. Good player. But the important thing that this leads to is what it means for A.J. Maddox, who is a good quarterback in his own right. I thought about this out loud a couple of weeks back. It's like, hey, what if Ole Miss is going to find somebody to be the third quarterback and not necessarily be the backup quarterback? What if that is an option for Ole Miss to have the 3 scholarship quarterbacks? And it was in my head, I was trying to work out how it could happen. And the more I thought about it, and the more I know that this staff likes A.J. Maddox and what he brings to the table, it makes all the sense in the world that he is the backup. And in the Gator Bowl, by the way, just off subject a little bit, there was A.J. Maddox in a number 3 jersey, a number change for the number 3 jersey. A.J. Maddox is a backup quarterback. He makes sense. He's had time in the system. I would not feel, I would not feel bad if he had to go into the game. And I know that he could do the job that it needed to be done because his experience in the offense is pretty good. So it makes sense to me that Ole Miss can go get a high school quarterback in the late signing period if everything works out. And you would have your 3 scholarship quarterbacks in place. Landon Locke's a good guy. He's a good player. He's somebody that could pick up the system and do a lot of the stuff that makes this offense click. Absolutely could. AJ Maddox is more than capable of being the backup quarterback. And of course, this is all going to be following Austin Simmons, who is likely the heir apparent as the starting quarterback. So we'll see exactly how that goes. All right. We're going to do a basketball special edition of Thunderdome. That is right. We're going to talk with Locked On Razorbacks John Nabors about the Ole Miss Arkansas basketball game tonight in the special basketball edition of Know Your Enemy. Let's go. We are in Thunderdome for basketball season. This is the first time for Locked On Ole Miss. I'm sure Locked On Razorbacks, John has done it quite a bit, but this is a new thing for me. And of course, I'm going to start off talking transfer portal because this is the first time I've talked to John since basically every Arkansas Razorback that went into the transfer portal ended up at Ole Miss. And, is Arkansas just the AAA affiliate? What is going on up in Northwest Arkansas?
It's certainly what it seems like. It's like, hey, if you end up being a good player at Arkansas, don't worry, you'll get a call from Ole Miss, and they'll call you up to the AAA. I guess. I mean, it's wild. I know that the portal season's crazy for everybody, and Arkansas's had some subtractions and additions over the years. But the amounts that they had, obviously this year, but also even last year with Chris Paul going over to Ole Miss, who ended up being a great player, it's really frustrating for Razorback fans. And it's funny is they don't even they're not mad at Ole Miss, they're not mad at Lane Kiffin, they're more mad at Sam Pittman for letting it happen. So yeah, it's gonna be great seeing. Can't wait for Luke Has to catch 3 touchdowns in the game against Arkansas next year. Jalen Braxton to have 2 interceptions. Patrick Kudas to just block everybody into oblivion. It's going to be awesome just to see all that in Oxford next year. Can't wait.
Well, the Arkansas fans should probably take solace in this because I have a working theory, John, of what's going on about in this age of the transfer portal. And we saw it with Jackson Dart. Year 1 quarterbacks coming out of the transfer portal, they struggle. Something just doesn't click. The offense is a little bit more simple. As they go into that second year, the offense becomes more complicated. The quarterback becomes more comfortable, and all of a sudden they kind of start letting loose. And the reason Arkansas fans should probably be excited is I can't imagine Bobby Petrino is comfortable with a simple offense. So it getting more complex, it's probably going to look a little better.
Here's the thing is your theory may be correct and all of that, but in Arkansas, no one gives a rip because they're just so down on everything. I mean, they lost. Arkansas's the only thing that they have returning is their quarterback, which is so strange. Usually you see a lot of that the opposite, but their entire offensive line is gone. Their tight end room's gone. Their wide receiver room's gone. Most of their running backs are gone. Their defensive players, a lot of those key guys are gone. So yeah, going to be a whole new roster for the Razorbacks. And I don't see any way in shape or form how you can say that's going to be better, but thank goodness for basketball season, I guess, right?
Yeah. I was just trying to bright side it a little bit. It is basketball season. I'm excited.
I will say though, real quick, if I was an Ole Miss fan, and maybe you guys are, I'd be pissed this year after all that. I'm sorry. And Lane Kiffin, I get him. I like him, always have, but he needs to shut up about the playoffs and all that stuff. You can't lose to Kentucky at home, my man. That's the thing. And that's where, if I was an Ole Miss fan, I don't know what it is about the Rebels. And I know I'm talking trash over here as a 6-6 team, but y'all always find a way to just come up short. 4th and 25, dare I say, those types of plays, just in those moments, whatever it is, you can't play in the SEC title game and you can't go to the playoff. I don't get it, but it is pretty crazy. So I'd be pretty pissed if I was an Ole Miss fan, but hey, y'all are going to be good again next year. So it's all good.
Well, I do have a saying that describes this year perfectly. And that is analytics is actually the old English word meaning bad football. And analytics bit Ole Miss 3 times this year, and Ole Miss missed the playoffs because they started to say, well, we should go for it on more to this 4th down and avoid this 25-yard field goal. And all of a sudden it turns sideways on you, and you get a team going Kentucky and 7 against Ole Miss, basically.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. Well, at least you finally destroyed Arkansas this year in football, because that game was always weird. And that was, I mean, y'all set records. And I think Lane Kiffin wanted to make a statement. So, yeah, not only did you beat the brains out of Arkansas, but you took all their best looking girls, too. So, yeah, Arkansas is feeling a little bit from the football season.
Yeah, I saw some kind of a walk and talk by Trey Biddy after that game that was just like, there was some serious PTSD happening at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough right now for, if you're a Razorback fan, to feel good about everything. But again, it's weird. And I don't know, Ole Miss fans may be upset by this, but Arkansas has always viewed themselves as either historically in the SEC as being on the same level playing field or maybe a little bit above Ole Miss. But then, of course, here over the past 10 years, that's proven otherwise. But the point is, I think at least maybe provide some solace with Arkansas that, hey, if Ole Miss can do it, you just got to get the right coach in. You got to get your Lane Kiffin. Simple as that. I think it provides them some solace, but it just doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon.
Yeah, and you have a situation to where there was an Arkansas media person about 7 years ago that put out an infamous tweet that has since then been retweeted every time that Arkansas has lost to Ole Miss or Mississippi State, saying that Arkansas should never lose to the Mississippi schools in anything. And from that moment, it was almost a bad luck moment tweet that basically Ole Miss and Mississippi State just kind of flipped the switch in that series.
Yeah, I know. And it's really tough for Razorback fans to just see that happening. And at least with Ole Miss, they won those games against Lane Kiffin, the past 2 home games that maybe they shouldn't have, and they always played well against them. But it really hurts them in all sports, and especially, baseball is another great example of it, where it's one thing to be bad or not be where you're at, but when you see the other programs that you feel like you should be just as good, if not better than, you're seeing in football like Ole Miss and Missouri, or in baseball, you're seeing Tennessee with your former assistant coach winning a title before you, or Ole Miss, who didn't even deserve to be in the postseason that year, win a title before you, or, the Porky Pig looking dude over at Mississippi State winning a title before you. Like that, all of that, it's bad enough when you're not getting it, but when everybody else that you feel like you're just as good, better than, getting it too, it just really puts Razorback fans in a like, why are they here? They don't even know why they're Razorback fans anymore. It's been a tough 18 months, Steven. It's been tough.
Absolutely. And let's turn the page, because John Calipari and the boys have it going on up on the hill. They're probably going to be favored by a fairly decent amount in this ball game, although they did get run by Tennessee. We'll talk about that in just a second. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, the best feature is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I was not using anymore, because we all know that these subscription services, they just want you to forget about it so you can keep on paying over and over and over again. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every single month. So cancel those unwanted subscriptions and reach those financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, John Nabors, Locked On Razorbacks Podcast, and we are going to talk about the Ole Miss and Arkansas basketball game tonight in Fayetteville in the Bud Walton Arena, and it's going to look like the Barnhill Arena. They've got the slobbering hog back on the floor, and it's the way that, if you remember, like I think the Scotty Thurman times from way back then, that is what Arkansas basketball looked like, John. And as a historian of the game, it's cool for me to see stuff like that.
Listen, that is something that it may sound ridiculous to anybody on the outside looking in, like, okay, it's a logo. Like, why does that matter? Why does it care? If you go back in history, when Arkansas, because say what you want, like Razorback basketball is a fine program. I still think it's the second best program in the SEC as far as set up for success and history compared to Kentucky. But they have a lot of tradition. I mean, Eddie Sutton, Hall of Fame coach, and Olin Richardson, Hall of Fame coach. Now John Calipari, Hall of Fame coach. But during those years of the 70s, 80s, 90s of dominance, they had that slobbering hog on there. Every highlight you ever saw was midcourt, that slobbering hog. And then you had a previous athletic director come in and be like, we're about branding here, so we're going to take it away. And as funny as it is, it's not just about the logo, because the logo is cool, but it's more about, hey, it's not always about branding and about corporate and about all that. Sometimes you got to throw the fans a bone. So I'm glad to see it back. It looks good. It looks a lot better than Arkansas's looked at times this year on the court, but at least the court itself looks pretty good.
Yeah, the problem with Arkansas is they had to open up in Knoxville against Tennessee, and that team is national championship caliber good. So I don't know if Arkansas fans can judge too much from that game. And I don't know how much that Ole Miss can take away from beating Georgia at home. I know that Ole Miss going on the road to Fayetteville, that's going to be advantage John Calipari, because this roster looks like basically what his Kentucky rosters look like. And it's just one of those things. I just don't know. It's kind of so early in the season. I can't really get a read on it yet.
Yeah, it's weird for Razorback fans and just me in general. With Eric Musselman or whoever was the coach, you kind of had an idea of like, all right, what they're going to be good at and what they're not going to be good at. And, you get to know the players a little bit. And there's a lot of in-state talent, Devo Davis, Jalen Williams, Moses Moody, guys from the state of Arkansas, Nick Smith Jr. And now it's like, okay, now when you get Calipari, which is still the stupidest, craziest thing I've ever seen, is Calipari being the coach. I still don't believe it sometimes. But you got him, and then there's not really any Arkansas connections. There's no Arkansas players. They're all really good and talented, but it's just almost like Razorback fans are having to get used to it of, okay, we think it's good, but like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? What is it going to look like? But it's been a tough go for them at times. I think health has been a big part of that. They've been having illnesses. They've had guys like Nelly Davis is still dealing with a wrist injury. They've had, of course, Big Z dealing with an ankle problem. Jonas Adu. Like it's just been weird to kind of really see this team potentially could be great, like Final Four caliber good, potentially. But there's just no evidence of that. And Cal always talks about, oh, well, you got to get the full roster there, which is true. I give him that. But losing the game to Tennessee wasn't something that Razorback fans were expecting to go in and win. But I think it was the way that they lost, where they just got physically dominated. I mean, 24 offensive rebounds for Tennessee. They just weren't ready for that. And that's where it's going to be interesting going up against another physical team in Ole Miss tonight. How are they going to counter that and learn from that, where you can only be as physical as the team you got, but can they at least try to punch back a little bit when it comes to physicality?
Yeah, and the Ole Miss weakness that they have on this team is probably rebounding. They do not rebound very well, although they out-rebounded Georgia on Saturday, and that's kind of what gives everybody pause, like, wait, what's going on here? Because if Ole Miss can out-rebound you, that's probably the magic book. If Ole Miss out-rebounds you, they're going to win the game. And because it's such a weakness. They're such a small team to begin with, but man, they have some terrific one-on-one scorers, and if they get hot, they can really light you up.
Yeah, and that's where with Arkansas they have NBA caliber talent. I mean, Boogie Fland is a phenomenal player at the point guard position. He has shown that he's not only a guy that gets a ton of assists a game, but he doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. Like his assist to turnover ratio is really good. He can shoot threes. He can hit big jumpers. He can get to the rack. He can do a lot of things, but the problem is in the games that it ain't working for him offensively, it's been kind of tough. I mean, Adu Thiero is awesome too. Like the dude's just a menace, and he can go for 25 on any given night. But that's where the lack of consistency has really come into play, and why it goes back to the whole point of feeling the potential's there. The potential is there if this team plays their A game and gets it going. There's nothing that's going to be in their way. But here we are, about 13, 14 games into the season, and I still really don't know what's going to happen tonight. I have no clue. I have no idea what's going to happen. So, talented team that has a lot of different weapons in different ways, but still trying to figure out how to utilize it in the best way possible.
Yeah, the big concern that Ole Miss fans have was probably the scoring droughts that just randomly seem to appear that goes on. They got off to a real slow start at the beginning of each half against Memphis, and that ended up costing them that ball game. Against Georgia in the first half was not a good half at all. Georgia ended up going into halftime by 2, but the first 10 minutes of the second half, all of a sudden it looked like the Oklahoma City Thunder were out there on the basketball court, and Ole Miss ran up to like a 15-point lead. Then they went to another scoring drought, and Georgia got it down to 2 points. That is kind of the up and down of this. Now, if Ole Miss fans are looking for something to take solace in, you're getting an Arkansas team probably before those good players kind of have meshed together. You definitely want to get a Calipari team early in the conference slate as opposed to playing them in late February. So that's probably a good thing that Ole Miss fans can hang their hat on.
Yeah, not only that, but the without question, the biggest disappointment for Arkansas this year has been Nelly Davis. Nelly Davis was the #1 transfer portal guy in the country last year. And by every single platform, he was #1 coming from FAU. He was averaging 20 points a game, just an incredible offensive threat. And he's been MIA. I know he's dealing with a wrist injury, and that was been part of it, but he's coming off the bench. He's only averaging 8 points a game. He shot the ball, I think the other against Tennessee only 4 times. He went 0 of 4. And so I think that if you could look at all the different things about Arkansas, what's good or bad or whatever, it really comes down to like, hey, if Nelly Davis can figure it out alone, where you can just count on somebody to go and get you 15 points a game, like just automatically, this guy's going to go for 15, and him being aggressive, I think that would really help out Arkansas. But they just don't have that guy, that dude offensively that's just going to, hey, we let the team go on an 8-0 run. We need to stop the bleeding, give me the ball, and get out of my way. I thought that Nelly would be that, and he hasn't been. And so they need to get him going because I think Arkansas's defense is really good. I think that they steal the ball a ton. They block a ton of shots. Rebounding is hit or miss, but for the most part, they've been pretty good. But it comes down to the offense and these slow starts. Arkansas has to get the offense going. They have to, hit their shots, but also create and everything. Because I'll be honest, tonight Arkansas is going to start in the first half badly because they do that every time at home, but then they turn it on in the second half. The question is going to be if Ole Miss is feeling themselves and if they're going to be good enough, in which I think they are. If they can weather that storm in the second half, they'll come out with a win.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm at the point, and we'll talk about it in the next segment about this. I don't know if I'm going to take an SEC team on the road to win the game unless their name is Tennessee or Auburn, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, Tennessee's really good, but maybe I'm hyping them up too much, and I hate doing it because I hate Auburn. But, man, they're about as good of a basketball team in college I've seen in the SEC in a long time. I mean, they've proven it time and time again. Not only are they beating people, they're just smoking people. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough to win on the road no matter what. And since it is in Bud Walton Arena, I'm always going to probably pick Arkansas because Bud Walton Arena is a tough place to play. But it's not because I think that little of Ole Miss. I just think that either way tonight, it's going to be low scoring, nasty, dirty game. Maybe have some flagrants, maybe some technicals. But it's going to be a close game no matter what.
The Ole Miss Arkansas game, always, no matter what the sport is, weird stuff happens.
Yep. Yeah. All the time. And I think back to some of the basketball games that's even happened, which, there's been times where Ole Miss has been good and had some run. I mean, the Marshall Henderson years, I hated that guy. But that was fun. But yeah, this particular game, even last year was very strange and how it all played out and all that. So yeah, that's why I feel like no matter what, it's going to be a weird one. But for Razorback fans' sake, it better not go the way the football game went where they get blown out at home, because Razorback fans they're on the edge, man. And I don't think they can deal with terrible performances at home any longer. And I think Ole Miss is good, but Florida coming to town on Saturday too. Yeah. If you was Ole Miss, there's a good chance you start 0-3 in conference play and 0-2 to start home in conference play. And that's going to be a huge and most difficult hole to try to dig yourself out of.
Yeah, as I say on my show all the time, it's a race to 8. You want 8 wins. That's what you're trying to do as quickly as possible. And to do that, you need to win games at home. Now, John, we made jokes about the transfer portal a little bit earlier in the show. You know what I think the next thing might actually be? With John Calipari of kind of ignoring Arkansas players and all of that, I think you could have a second coming of the Rob Evans years at Ole Miss where Keith Carter and Anthony Boone and those Arkansas players found their way to Oxford to play basketball.
Well, I certainly hope not, because that again would be just another feather in the cap for Ole Miss over Arkansas. I do say though that this year, the reason that it's not anyone's fault that there's no Razorback players on the roster. It's just they didn't have any in his timing. But they already got a pretty good player in Isaiah Seeley from Springdale coming in next season. He's already committed to the Razorbacks. But that's what I feel good about. Say, Arkansas, they don't produce as a state high level and a ton of football talent, but basketball, they have some great players come out of the state each and every year. And so I think Cal, because that was another thing too. You remember Malik Monk? He was an Arkansas kid. Cal stole him from Kentucky. Same with Archie Goodwin, 5-star players. So I'm like, all right, well, okay, now you're at Arkansas, Cal. So those players should never get away. You have to be able to keep them in state. I think he will, but he's really trying to hit the portal a lot more these days too. So we'll wait and see.
All right, so when we come back, we will wrap it up and look at the key matchups in this game, some players that both sides might need to kind of take over in this game, and give our score predictions. This is the Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Stick around. All right, we are back to wrap up a third and final segment on the Ole Miss Rebels versus the Arkansas Razorbacks tonight in Bud Walton Arena. Listen, John, the key matchup in this game, and I think the key matchup for Ole Miss as this season goes on, will be two players. Matthew Morrell, just because no matter which floor he's in, he's one of the best players on it, obviously. So you need your best players to play well. But I think Dre Davis is a key player. He did not have a good game against the Georgia Bulldogs. When he plays well, they play really well. Against Louisville early in the year, they just completely knocked out Louisville within 5 minutes of the game. And a lot of that had to do with just Dre Davis being everywhere. If Dre Davis can be that guy against Arkansas and with those against those NBA level players, I think Ole Miss basketball, with the way they played defensively this year so far, I think it looks pretty good for the Rebels.
Yeah, and for Arkansas, I wish I could bring up Nelly Davis and say, hey, it's about him, but we haven't seen it yet, so I'm just going to move on from him until we actually see it. To me, it's another guy that I mentioned, Boogie Fland. One of the best games and the best win for sure Arkansas's had so far was against Michigan in Madison Square Garden. He's the reason why they won that game. He had 20 points, 7 assists, 2 rebounds, 3 steals, and only a turnover, and hit the game-winning shot, essentially. Like, those are the types of games that you need from him, but against Tennessee, he didn't play well. So they didn't win the game. Against Illinois earlier this year, another game that Arkansas lost, he played terrible. And so to me, it comes down to him. If Boogie Fland goes out there and has a Boogie Fland game where he's not turning the ball over, he's dishing it out, he's getting a ton of offense flowing, and he's hitting his shots, and in particular his threes, I think Arkansas wins this game. And the same with a guy like Adu Thiero. If he can just be Adu Thiero, he's just a stat machine. If he can just be Adu Thiero, I think Arkansas wins. But even then, Ole Miss is good. They got to have somebody in that third spot. Sometimes it's been Trevon Brazile. Sometimes it's been a guy like a Nelly Davis who's had a game or two. But you maybe even a DJ Wagner who played pretty good against Tennessee. You got to have a third guy step up and get the scoring going. Because I think no matter what, the defense is going to be fine. It's going to be, can the offense have some flow, have some momentum, have some energy? Because if Arkansas can't hit shots in this game, I think Ole Miss wins it.
Yeah, the way we keep talking about it and thinking about out loud is Ole Miss can just prevent second chance opportunities for Arkansas. They're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean it's that's the way it is. And Arkansas, again, they've had games where they've looked really good in one aspect and terrible in the other. But I will say the one thing that Arkansas does do a pretty good job of consistently across the board as a team is they are able to at least do well in the rebounding aspect and blocking shots. Like, those are the things that they've done a really good job in. And if there's any sort of those blocked shots that had happened, they're going to be in great shape. But it's also about if Ole Miss gets Trevon Brazile or Big Z in foul trouble, those are kind of their bigs of this team. Their shot blocking capability is going to be out the door, and then you can be a lot more aggressive. So to me, it's going to be about the start of this game, how the officials call it, because I think it's going to be a physical game. Because I don't like Arkansas's chances of free throw. They're a bad free throw shooting team, at least in moments.
So this is a typical Cal roster.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much like dead set. Like, if you want to know, like, because some people are asking me, he's like, hey, how's this Arkansas team look? I'm like, oh, just look at that 2016 Kentucky team. And that's pretty much what it's looking like. Because even right now, I believe at this point in time, they're shooting, if I got the percentages correctly, yeah, they're shooting 71% from the free throw line, but it's only a handful of them that are actually hitting them. The most of them are pretty poor from it. So, yeah, if Arkansas gets to the free throw line, don't worry, Ole Miss. Arkansas has not been able to hit their shots from there either. So that could be another thing that plays in consideration.
Well, there's Ole Miss fans, Arkansas fans watching this. There's just a few things that you can take to the bank. This is going to be a weird game, that something strange is going to happen. You're going to have a physical football game because, rival or not, we can have that conversation when these two teams get together. They go at each other, and they do that in every single sport on the field. And fourth of all, you're going to see the slobbering hog on the floor, and having that back in the SEC basketball. I mean, it's been 20 years. It's good to have it back.
Yeah. And also, I believe this is Chris Beard's first game in Bud Walton Arena as the Ole Miss coach, if I'm not mistaken. So, I know he used to coach at Little Rock, UALR, and he's very familiar with the state. So who knows? Maybe that adds a little bit of extra motivation for him wanting to come in and make a statement that way too. Could play a factor into it.
Yeah, it's a big game for Ole Miss because if they can get the W in Fayetteville tonight, they have LSU on Saturday, and they have a chance to start 3-0 with Alabama coming into town.
Yeah, and as we talked about with this SEC and how good it is, I don't know if anyone's going to run the table, but shoot, if a team goes 7-11 in SEC play, they're getting into the tournament and probably a 6 seed. So it's like, it's not necessarily, you want to win every game, but it's not like, oh, if you lose a game against a good opponent in the SEC, it crushes your chances. The net rankings are high. The league is amazing. So, you talk about getting to that 8 games. I think any team that goes and wins 8 games in the SEC is going to be in just great shape in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. All right, so let's do score predictions in this game. I'll go first. I cannot take an SEC road team to win a game. I just can't. They're not in good faith. As big as a homer as I am, I cannot say that Ole Miss is going to go up in Bud Walton Arena and win. I think Arkansas is going to win. It's going to be a relatively close game, probably something like 67-60.
Yeah, I could see it being like that. I would say, again, I agree with the low scoring aspect of it. But I say Arkansas does win. It's going to be a hard-fought match, but I think it's going to be something like a 4-point game in favor of Arkansas. So I would say about like 68-64, something to that extent. Arkansas, again, back and forth, but maybe in the final minute, Ole Miss misses a shot. They got a foul, and then Arkansas ends up kind of putting it away at the 4-point possession or a 4-point margin of victory. But yeah, I'll be shocked no matter what happens if either team blows out the other. Like if it's a blowout city, and when I mean blow up, like double-digit win for either one of the other teams, I'll be shocked. But for the sake of Razorback fans, if it is going to happen, I hope it's in their favor because, yeah, they got Florida coming to town. They got a little bit of a more favorable schedule, but they got to go to Florida, to Auburn, to Kentucky. Like almost all their games, the toughest games in conference are on the road. So you got to take care of home court.
All right, John, what do you have going on your channel after the ball game if Ole Miss fans want to check you out?
Yeah, so we'll just give reactions to the game itself, regardless, win or lose, and just try to give our thoughts and opinions on it. And it's amazing how the range of emotions can go. But we'll be discussing that as well as continuing to keep up with football and transfer portal stuff because that thing is always ongoing. But you can check it out, Locked On Razorbacks, wherever podcasts are found, on YouTube. You follow me on social media. It's John Nabors Show as well. And again, if you can't find me, that's on you because I feel like I'm everywhere and I'm annoying about it. So so be sure to check it out if you want to have some raging of a game, win or lose, for Ole Miss.
All right, John. John Nabors, Locked On Razorbacks. Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. John, thank you very much for joining us, and safe travels if you're up there in Northwest Arkansas going to the game, and if you're heading back to the house. And please, this weekend, be safe.
Will do. You as well. Appreciate it. And Ole Miss fans, enjoy the players that have been provided to you from the University of Arkansas. They're very upset by it, but hey, their loss is your gain. So enjoy those players. You got some good ones.
All right, thanks, bud. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college football and college sports. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to products. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. See you tomorrow.